Hey, it's Jonah Nelson with Family Tree Nursery, and today we're going to be talking about planting trees. Now, not just one tree today. Today we're planting 3 trees. In this client's home, they want a privacy screen, so we're going to be planting 3 arborvitaes. I'll get to the specifics of the varieties and why we chose the one that we're doing today, but a couple things to consider when you are planting a tree is the environment that you're planting in. How much sunlight do you have? What soils you have? And how you can water it. So these are the things that you really got to consider. In this client's situation, they want a privacy screen that will be green all year long. So these arborvitaes behind me are going to be the perfect option for what they're looking for. Now with these arborvitaes, although they do provide screening all year long, it does mean that you've got to be sensitive to their watering needs. Where a deciduous tree would lose its leaves and go dormant in the wintertime, an evergreen tree, even in the winter, if we are in a drought, they do need watered because they will continue to grow and transpire all winter long. These arborvitaes are a perfect tree and one of the most popular trees for using as a screening plant. The spring grove arborvitae is the most common of these and can get quite large in a landscape. So if you have a smaller space or a more narrow area to work with, the emerald green arborvitae is the tree that a lot of folks will go to. The nice thing is that recently they come out with some newer varieties of arborvitaes that mimic and look just like a spring grove or a green giant arborvitae, but they have a more narrow stature. And that's what we're planting today. And this is a great tree for the area, and this one is called Northern Spire Arborvitae. Now the Northern Spire Arborvitae is about a half size of what a green giant would normally get. This one's only going to get about 5 foot wide, which means it won't come too far out into the lawn, but it will grow together nicely to create some privacy screen. These arborvitaes are a slower growing variety because they are a little bit more compact in their habit, but they will provide that screening as they continue to mature without getting too wide out into the other area. So the 5 foot wide and about 15 foot tall at maturity will create a really nice backdrop. So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to plant all 3 of these. I'm going to start with the center tree to make sure that we're centered on the area that we're working with. And then we're going to space these trees about 3 foot apart because the client does want these to grow together to create a nice screen so that they don't have to look over the fence and they've got that area all covered up. So we're going to be planting these a little bit closer today than you would normally plant them. You could plant them about 3 foot apart. At 5 foot wide, you would normally plant them about 5 foot apart. But this is the space that we're working with and they'll do just fine, but they will grow together to become one screen as they continue to mature. The space that we're working with here does have a nice open area where we can use to stack and remove the soil. And so we can work in this entire area rather than having to haul this soil off or put it in a wheelbarrow or use a tarp. We've got a really nice area to work with. The problems that we could run into in this area could be some roots. There is a really giant silver maple right overhead, providing some nice shade. But we also have had a tree removed in this area. There was once a pine that lived in this bed. It's been removed about 2 years ago, but I'm pretty certain that we're going to run into some of those roots as we go along. Now that's not a concern as we get to them. I've brought my little saw to cut some roots out of the way, or we'll chop them with the axe if we have to. But this is where we're going to get these trees planted. And I don't think anything's going to stop us today. We're going to get it done. Now, when we're getting started, we do need to make sure that we're digging the hole large enough for these to fit into. This is a 15-gallon container tree. Now, a container tree is really nice in the fact that you're not losing any roots. All the roots that this tree has ever grown and produced are in the container with it. So we're not going to go through a whole lot of transplant shock because it has the roots that are there. The thing to keep in mind when planting a container tree is that the tree roots can circle and wrap. So we'll be looking for those, and if we see any of those roots that are wrapped around or circling, then we'll cut those and score the root system to ensure that they push out into the native soil. We're going to dig the hole twice as wide as the root ball, and then we're going to dig it just deep enough for it to be planted in the ground, but not bury the trunk of the tree. This is going to sit slightly above grade. About 1 inch above grade is where we want the finished height of that root ball to be set into the hole there. We will then amend the soil with our compost. We will also add mica into the hole so that we get good rooting and establishment for this root system. And mica is a great product because it makes the roots more efficient at absorbing nutrition and water. We'll get that mixed in, rubbed right against the root ball. We'll tuck the backfill soil in. We'll stake all 3 of these, and then we'll get a good layer of mulch around the base to make these look picture perfect. All right, we've got our hole dug and excavated, I think to a fairly close point. We'll measure it and double check the depth here in just a moment. But did we run into some roots? Oh, you betcha. We ran into a bunch of roots. Nothing that the shovel couldn't handle. Now I did break a shovel while doing this, but I was using it as a pry bar to try to get it done. Hindsight, probably shouldn't have done that. Could have used an axe or a saw, but those were fairly small roots. So we've got our hole excavated. I'm gonna check the depth by using the handle of my shovel here. I put it up to the pot, kind of grab the top of it here. I will set it in, and it looks like we are right at grade, maybe slightly even below. And so when I go to fill the hole back in with the compost, I'm gonna use the hole as the mixing bowl. I'll mix that compost and turn it in. Using some of the soil, we'll excavate it and get the tree set in at the proper planting depth. All right, we've got our all-purpose Nature's Blend compost that we're gonna blend into the soil here to make a really good composted mix. We wanna use about 50% compost to 50% native soil to ensure that we get good rooting and establishment for this tree as it gets planted into the ground here. After we use our compost, we get the tree out of the pot. I'll show you what those roots look like, and then we'll talk about using the mycorrhizae to make sure we rub that to the root system and get that tree settled in its hole properly. So we've got our Northern Spire Arborvitae here. We're gonna be pulling it out of its pot and then getting it set into the hole to find out if we're at the proper depth, inspecting the root system, making sure that we don't have any circling or wrapping roots, and making sure that we plant it right at the root flare. All right, so here is the Northern Spire Arborvitae. It's got a good looking root system here. I'm gonna excavate some of the soil just off the top. See what we've got going on. These roots, we're gonna rough them up just a little bit. Don't see anything too alarming as far as circling roots go. We will pull some of these up as we find them. Oh yeah, they look great and healthy. I like to dig down right here at the base of the tree just to make sure that we're close to that root flare, and we are right at it there. It's harder to see on an evergreen sometimes because that foliage is in so close. You can see at the base of this tree where the roots are coming down and going right into the soil there, and that's what we want to make sure we're right at ground level or slightly above to make sure that this root flare is protected. So I've got the tree set in the hole. I've really liked the depth that we're at right now. So now we're going to use the mic product. We're going to rub it against the root system. We're going to put about 2 cups in this hole against the root mass here to ensure that we get good inoculation, where that fungus can then grow and colonize on the root system to help the tree absorb nutrients and water more efficiently. Now we've got the mic on the base of the root ball there, and we're going to backfill the tree with the soil and the compost that we've poured around the base here. So now we've got our first arborvitae in the ground. We are going to wait to stake this or put mulch around the base of it until we plant the other 2 to make sure that we've got our spacing appropriate and to make sure that we keep the environment around the base of these trees really nice and clean. We want to make this look picture perfect when we're done. And so I'm going to start excavating the other 2 holes, and we'll show you what it looks like when they're all planted, mulched, and staked and ready to grow. All right, so we've got all 3 of the arborvitaes planted, and now we've got them staked and mulched. We've added the mic product to the root zone also to ensure that they get established well. Now what we want to do is water our trees. And watering trees, there can be a little bit of a mystery of how to do that, how often to do it, how much to do it. And so what we like to recommend is watering with the hose on a slow trickle. The trickle should be coming out the end of the hose about the diameter of a pencil. And this should run at the base of that tree, a newly planted tree this size, for at least an hour. And you want to do that once a week. The hose can go right up against the truck so that it percolates down through the root mass and ultimately fills that hole completely with water so that that tree is thoroughly watered. You only need to do that once a week if we are not getting an inch of rainfall or more. If you get an inch of rainfall or more during the course of that week, even accumulated rainfall to a total of an inch, then you don't need to water. But if we do not receive that rainfall, you need to put a hose at the base on a slow trickle 1 time per week for their entire year. This does include the winter months, especially with evergreens and broadleaf evergreens, things like boxwoods or southern magnolias. They all need to be watered even in the wintertime. The wintertime, these are going to be evergreen, still using water, but you can back that off in the wintertime to watering about once every 3 to 4 weeks rather than every week. But this is essential, especially going into the summer, that these get watered once a week. Once a month, you should be watering with root stimulator. This is 3.5 tablespoons to a gallon of water, and this is like baby plant food. This gives them the nutrition that they'll need to get started off right. Do this once a month for the first growing season, and then after that, get back to that regular routine of watering with a hose on a slow trickle at the base of that plant for at least an hour. On smaller shrubs, you can back that down depending on the size of the plant, but these trees were in a 15-gallon container-grown tree and they should be trickled for at least an hour. Watering is probably one of the most confusing things because we do have neighborhoods that have irrigation systems, but you can't rely on that to water a large tree like this. A 15-gallon tree, its root zone is going to be down in the ground about 1 foot, and most irrigation systems, not all, but most irrigation systems are set up to just water the first top couple inches to water turf. So relying on the irrigation can lead to failure of the tree because that root zone may not be getting saturated down to the bottom as it should be if you're watering it with a slow trickle. That's how you plant the trees. They've been staked, they've been mulched, they've been fertilized, and they should be good to go. And that's how we plant a hedge or a screen at Family Tree Nursery. We look forward to seeing you soon. You can check us out at familytreenursery.com. Check us out on Instagram or check out our YouTube page where we teach you all about how we grow plants and how we plant them in our landscapes to thrive in the Midwest.